Hi, good morning. Good morning, America. How y'all doing? This is AK Babers with next episode of Keeping It Real Estate, the hip hop edition. This week I got my guest on here, one of my business allies that I'm trying to work closely with because some of my business needs that me and my wife got going on. But it's attorney Chavon Carr. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me this morning.
No problem, no problem. Thanks for coming.
No problem.
We've actually, me and you've been kind of working together, and my wife. We've been working together for a little while now, trying to educate the people on probate and life estates and things like that. So,
Yes,
yeah.
which is very important. It's something that we all have to deal with and impacts all of our lives. So the more education we have on it, the better.
Yep. And the thing is funny, right before we started, we was talking about generations and things like that. And I think we're at a very important point in history as far as transfer of wealth. I don't think we ever been here in history where the baby boomers are starting to transfer everything over to the Gen X. And I'm just saying, like with the development evolution of time, this is the first time they, even not just for our generation, for other generations as well, where they had enough wealth collectively as a whole to pass on to the next generation. And we see it now, but in our generation, we call it what? Gentrification.
Right.
We call it gentrification. And that's because we don't know how we haven't learned how to hold on to our secure our assets.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So coming out of slavery, I believe that coming out of slavery, the baby boomers was that generation that first had that 40 acres and a mule, right?
Right. And it's important because with the baby boomers, they were such a huge population growth for America. And what we're seeing now is that the baby boomers are getting older. They're passing away. They're developing Alzheimer's, dementia, things of that nature, where they need proper care and a plan to make sure that what they were able to obtain, they're able to pass that on.
And that's why we're here, right?
Right.
So this week's episode is themed after an album. You know, we do an album for every episode. So this particular one is called, can anybody guess? Drum roll. You got drum roll in there, Jar? Never mind, we'll put it in there later. But it's The Blueprint by Jay-Z, you know what I mean? Namesake-wise, you know what I mean? After we start looking at and breaking down some of the questions and stuff, we actually seen that it had a lot of correlation to what's going on. So Blueprint, 2001, Jay-Z, I think this is the album where he first popped off, I think. It's probably when Beyonce first fell in love with him because all the albums before then was kind of like all wet East Coast albums. Nobody really understood them, you know, being from the South, that is. And I think once this album hit, his whole career changed, and then he became that mogul that we all know and love, I guess. Right?
Yeah, I could see that.
So let's get to it then. Let's see. Do you got anything on that's going on the horizon that you want to talk about before we kind of jump into these questions?
Not necessarily. We can go ahead and get right into it.
You know something I do want to ask you about? So you ran for probate judge?
Yes. So in this past election cycle in the primaries, I ran for a probate judge.
Okay.
And so here in Harris County, we have statutory probate judges that handle just probate matters. So that's going to include any time of decedent's estates. That's when individuals pass away. It's also going to include guardianship when individuals aren't able to handle their own affairs, and also mental health. So because of the size of Harris County, we have statutory probate courts. Other counties and other places don't have that. And so it makes us unique that we can put actual practitioners in those positions that understand the needs of the community, have worked in the community.
So how many courts are there in Harris County?
There are 5 probate courts.
5 probate courts. And how are they broken up? Are they geographic?
No, random selection. Each case is just randomly selected on a wheel as to which court you're going to be placed in. And the court that I was running for was a brand new court that was created. We originally only had 4 probate courts.
Okay.
And due to the growth and size of Harris County, they've increased it to 5. Now, because Harris County is still growing, there's going to be more probate courts coming along.
All right. So what makes that unique in other places? You say you're able to put practitioners in place that are used to or understands the community, I guess. But if there's no geographic arrangement to them, how do they pick the, cases?
Yeah, so like I said, it's just a will that each case that's filed goes to certain courts. So that's why it's important. It's because they're not geographically located. It's why it's important to have diversity on the bench. So
Mm,
because you don't know which courts you're going to get
mm,
into, and so the more diversity you have on the bench, the greater you're able to mirror the diversity here in Harris County.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Harris County being probably one of the most diverse counties in America nowadays, right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that was something that came out recently that we are one of the most diverse counties.
That's kind of weird, right? Because you see it. I get you from here.
I'm born and raised here,
So
so.
yeah, so you're used to seeing the typical demographic that Houston
Hmm.
have. You know what I mean? Just like any other American city. But then all of a sudden they say it's so diverse. And you're like, maybe we're just so used to diversity. Maybe that's what it is.
Well, also that, but what I remember times where I would travel and go out of town or go
Hmm.
out the country. And then when I came back to Houston,
You
I'm like,
recognize it.
I recognize, oh, we
Okay.
really are
Yeah,
diverse.
yeah,
Because when
yeah,
I would go to these other places, there was something missing. And I
hmm
couldn't quite figure it out. So I came back. I was like, oh yeah, this is the diversity
hmm
that they speak of. Like you said, we're just so used to it because we're born and
Yeah,
raised here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Okay, so let's stay on the topic of probate. So we did a seminar on probate, you and I and my wife, and even it was in South Park, so MLK and Reed area. We had a small turnout, but it was surprising to know just through the research of it, like how many people don't actually know what probate is. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I think a lot of people get these terms and they intermingle them all the time: probate, wills, trust, and they
That's
just say it
right.
and they just know that it deals with death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, what exactly is probate then?
So probate is it's the act of taking what a deceased person owned
Hmm.
and transferring it to their heirs or beneficiaries. So that's what the legal definition of it is. And basically what that means is that when someone passes away, we have to do some legal process to get their assets to their loved ones or whoever it may be. So it's the transfer of assets.
So this is where we're missing out culturally, right? Because
Hmm.
everybody believes. I was even at the Sunnyside Civic Club meeting last night, and I was talking to a older young lady, and she mentioned like, "Yeah, we got this house over here, and my brother's paying the taxes on it. It's three of us still alive. Mama dead, daddy dead. Who gonna get the house?" And I
Hmm.
was like, "I said, did y'all do the will and do the probate process? What's that? He been over there, been paying the taxes, so it's his, right?"
Right. And that's
Yeah,
usually what happens is that people believe that, oh, the law says this, so it's automatically
yeah,
going to
yeah,
go. You have to have paperwork that
yeah,
supports that.
yeah.
That's what the law says in theory, but you have to have the paperwork that documents that. And that's the probate process of getting that paperwork to document it. There's different forms of probate depending on what you owned and your different
Mm,
circumstances. So,
mm,
what may be true for one person is not going to
mm,
be true for the
mm,
next person.
mm.
And so, I think that that's where there's always a disconnect that, oh, this was my mom's house, so now it's my house. Well, there we need some paperwork to back that
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's the big thing. So I'm gonna ask a layman question. I think I know the answer, but everybody's situation is different. It's kind of like
Mhm.
me in a real estate transaction. Somebody say, "Well, my cousin bought a house for this." Do you know exactly how much your cousin make down to the penny? Do you know how much
Mhm.
alimony they get? And everybody numbers is gonna be totally different. But people really want to know is, it's my shit. Why can't I just give my shit to my kids? Why do I gotta take it through a court system? Why do I gotta let these attorneys look at my stuff? I thought this was in America. We was in the land of the free. And when I die, I can't just give my stuff to my kids.
Well, no, so it's for protection because when you got the property, you had something showing that you have the property.
Yes.
And so you have to have something written now to show that the whoever you're giving the property to. And so it's to make sure that we have a clear chain of title
Hmm.
because as you know, if you go to close for a property and you don't have a clear chain of title, you can't close on that
Yeah.
property.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so going through the probate process ensures clean title and ensures that things are being transferred the way that you intend them to be transferred
Yeah.
if you have a will. If you don't have a will, then the state statutes are going to determine who gets what. And
Mhm.
each family situation is going to be different based off of the makeup and characters of the family.
So at minimum, if I'm the head of the family, at minimum, if I want to have a say so where my stuff is going, then I should at least write a will.
You should definitely always write a will,
Okay.
even if you
Okay.
feel you don't have anything. Everyone has an estate. The shirt on your back is your estate.
Okay.
Everyone needs to have a will. Is
Okay.
always my opinion. There's other estate planning tools that you
Mhm.
can use,
Can we get into
but the
those?
will is where we always want to start.
Okay. So I have my will. What's the price of a will? Like, say, just at minimum, what's
They vary from different prices, depending on what you're intending to do with them.
okay?
I think you could probably find some attorneys that will probably charge around $500 for a
Okay.
will.
Okay.
But when you're doing your will, you don't want to just stop there. You
Yeah,
want to
of
look at your
course.
other estate planning documents,
Mhm.
because with the will, that's only going to control when you pass away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, as I mentioned earlier, we have our baby boomers that are having a higher rate of Alzheimer and dementia.
Mm.
And so, we need to be able to care for them too.
Mhm.
And so, the will's not going to take care of that because
Mhm.
they're still alive. So,
Mhm.
you're going to need other estate planning documents like power of attorneys and medical power of attorneys. And so, I always advise individuals, don't just stop at the will,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's other estate planning documents that you need, and you want to make sure that we're not piecemealing things together,
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
have everything in
Mhm.
place.
And that's what's happening. I know just from my parents that they don't have Alzheimer's or anything, thank God. But they're very stubborn. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? And
mhm,
they know what they know. They've been around 70, 80 years. You can't tell them nothing. You know what I mean? And I know I'm not the only one going through this. So, guys,
mhm,
everybody that's my age and that we got aging
mhm.
parents, let's try to capture this information now. Let's try to make sure that we get it done, because what ultimately happens, right? Um, Grandma and Papa, they didn't worked hard and saved up their last little sharecropper money to buy this house or whatever. Then they hand it down to our mom and dad, and it may or may not have been done
Mhm.
right. But say if it wasn't done now, and then I give it over to my kids could have the greater chance of losing that property just because we don't have that clear chain of custody.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then, if you're not properly documenting how it's being transferred
Hmm.
down, you're going to have multiple owners.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to deal with multiple
Hmm.
owners, because now one property that was owned by mom and dad is now owned by five children.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now all those children have what we call undivided
Hmm.
interest. They can do what they want to do with their
Hmm.
interest that they own in that property.
Hmm.
And it's hard enough to get two people to agree, let alone five people to agree.
Yes. And then now you got, so say if you got five people, one of them passed, and one that passed had 6 kids. Now you got 4 people plus 6 kids that got interest in
That's
in the
right.
property.
That's right. So each generation it will continue to grow
And get
as
worse.
to how many owners you
Yeah.
have and how many individuals you have to work
Yeah.
with to get a issue resolved.
So that leads to my next question, which I guess I pretty much uh, missed. I mean, we pretty much answered it. Equitable distribution. Like, how
Mhm.
do you fairly divide all of that up? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and so that's a conversation that you have to sit with and figure out, because I have families that come in all the time. Let's say they have three children and they have a house, their main assets. A lot of times our houses are our main assets.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
have a house and they've worked hard for this house, and they want to make sure that their children have somewhere to stay. And so they want to leave the house to all three children. And so we have to advise them and counsel them on what that reality looks like
What it costs.
and what it costs. The first
Mhm.
question is, if you leave this house to all three children, are you leaving them money to care for this house?
Mm.
Because maybe two of the three children may have their own house to care
Yeah.
for and may not want to take on that
Yeah.
burden, or may
Yeah.
not even live in the state
Mhm.
or want that responsibility.
Mhm.
And so we have to be realistic about who our children are and what their abilities are to take care and manage homes,
Mhm.
and what would be the best use of this asset that you've created
Mhm.
for your children. Is it best to go ahead and sell it and split the equity between the children so that they can do whatever they
Yeah.
want? Or do you want only one of the children to have the house, and then maybe you leave an insurance policy to
Mhm.
the other children? And so those are different things that we can sit down and talk about. So that's why it's always important that you speak with an estate planning attorney who
Mhm.
understands and can guide you through these options of what your financial plan looks like, in
Yeah.
terms of not just having a will, but what does that mean in reality?
Yeah, yeah, and that's true because owning a house, even though I love home ownership and I think home ownership is for everybody, I don't think everybody can afford home ownership, and
Mhm.
probably everybody probably shouldn't be a homeowner. You know what I mean? And that's the most important thing because you have those things. So that kind of leads into you answer a lot of my questions on just by that one statement. Um, but just because you pay property taxes,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean you own the property.
That's right. So
Yeah.
anyone can pay property taxes. Anyone. They consider that a gift. If you're not the owner of the property tax of the property and you're paying the property tax, that's just considered a gift.
So you're saying little Ray Ray can be standing in his house for 10 years after grandma passed and he has no stake in this house.
It would probably be owned by multiple people, and
Yeah.
if he's paying the
Yeah.
property taxes, then he can. That's just to
Hmm.
thank you because
Hmm.
he may
Hmm.
only own a fractional
Hmm.
interest of that property. But on terms of property taxes, one of the things that we always want to be mindful of is that if we are our elders, say they're 65 and older, they have their homestead exemption on their property,
Hmm.
so they have a lower tax bill that they're paying.
No, you're right.
Once they pass away and it goes to individuals who aren't 65 and they aren't considering this their homestead, they're going to have to pay the full taxes.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's a cost to be mindful of when we're talking about, can my children afford this
Hmm.
this home?
Hmm. Yeah, and that's very, very important. I think a lot of people out there now are paying property taxes with the intent of thinking that it's going to be theirs. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Knowledge. I think a lot of stuff that misses out in our culture is just simply knowledge, lack of
Hmm.
knowledge. So he's going to be paying that property tax. And guys, we're not saying this so that if you have a legacy property to let it go by not paying, stop paying the property tax because it's not going to be yours. What we're saying is get your stuff together and get your paperwork together so that you can become the rightful owner of the
Right.
property. You know what I mean? It may be the fact that if you sit the family down, the family look at it, like she said, John over here, he lives in Sugarland. He got 4 kids that's in good schools over there. He ain't got no extra money to be paying property taxes. Mary over here, probably the job ain't that great, so she don't want to pay property taxes. And this brother's out of town, so it may be the fact that Ray Ray may be the best person for it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But the fact that in our culture, a lot of times we never sit down and have that depth conversation.
Right. And that's why it's important that, as we talked, to have a blueprint,
Yeah,
to
have a
have a
blueprint.
map laid out for your family,
Hmm.
because we can't just pass on assets without passing on wisdom. And
Mm.
so there's no good to have this asset if we're not passing on the wisdom that needs to come
Hmm.
with it.
Hmm. That's very true. That's very true. All right. So, what I want to talk about? Oh, so we got a lot of people that's dealing with, and I know I'm gonna mess this up. I did it before. Medicaid and Medicare.
Hmm.
One of the harsh realities that I've realized lately that if you receive which one I'm talking about,
Medicaid.
if you're receiving Medicaid, and I'm saying you're at the end of no, I want to say end of your life. You're in the later years of your life. You have to receive Medicaid, and you have small assets, little money or whatever. A lot of times, that house that you own becomes collateral, right?
Yeah. So what
Okay.
happens is with Medicaid, so we have two systems. We have Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is when you reach a certain age. Care, that's how you think about it. Medicare, we're caring for our elders.
Say
The
that again.
Medicare is where you're caring for your elders. So
Okay.
you're eligible because America, we're going to care for our
Okay.
elders. So they
Okay.
give you Medicare.
Okay.
That's the way I remember it.
Okay.
But
I'm gonna use that.
Medicaid, we're offering aid to you if you need some type of aid. So that's how I always keep it in my mind. So if your family member or individual has a need to be on Medicaid, and that's going to be based on their income. And what we see a lot of times is that older individuals that have retired, they get to a point where they're having their illnesses that need 24-hour care or just need a lot of care. And so what happens is they're going to have to seek assistance from the government to pay for those medical expenses. And so they get on what's called Medicaid.
Okay.
And so with that, Medicaid says, we're going to pay for these medical expenses because you're only allowed to have X amount of money in your bank account. So if your bank account is over XYZ, you don't qualify. And if you own a home, we're going to allow you to keep that home. But upon your passing, we're going to put a lien on that home because you owe us the money that we took care of you for, because they see it as you should sell your home and pay for your medical expenses. But if you decide not to sell your home and pay for your medical expenses and decide to get on Medicaid, then upon your passing, we want our money back. And there are different ways that you can preserve that asset if there is a family member that does need to go on Medicaid. There's some Medicaid planning options that you can do. You want to sit with an attorney who's familiar with that. There are some, we've hear a lot now about transfer on death deeds, which are TODs, which are a legal instrument that bypasses that Medicaid lien. So if that's done in a certain amount of time, then upon that individual's passing, they would be able to pass that property on without that lien attaching. But it all has to do with timing.
Yes, and that proves how important this is to talk to professionals. One of the things I see in the senior community is also, like I said before, they think they know it all, and they never want to talk to a professional. And you cannot get a TOD. I believe it's like 5 years before they would apply for Medicaid.
Well,
right?
so there's two different things. So there is the TOD, but then there's a 5-year look back period in which you can't transfer any property if you're attempting to get on Medicaid. But with the TOD, that is a little bit of an exception because with the TOD, you still own the property.
Okay.
It's just that upon your passing, you're saying it goes to X, Y, Z.
Okay. And we're not going to get too far.
Yeah, I don't want to get in the weeds on that.
Because it's easy to mislead people in this social media microwave society.
Take a sound bite and run with it.
Yeah, so I don't want to get you in trouble anyway. But you led right into my next question. You just a brain. You reading my brain today. All right, so I guess the other thing is in our culture, we always say it's ain't nothing promised but death and taxes. And so I guess people get a concern when we talk about death. It's like, well, what about the money I owe? You know what I mean? So how does that get wrapped up, like with creditors and things like that?
Yeah, so there are debts that will have to be paid upon your passing, but it all depends on what form of probate that you do and how you handle that. And so some of the debts will go away, but you want to sit down with someone and look at what the debts of the estate are and what would be the best probate procedure to handle that. But it's not true that they just go away. Not all of them go away. It's a process.
Okay, it's a process. What are some of the things that you hear? You've been doing this for how long now?
Almost 18 years now.
Man, you talk about the blueprint, a song cry. That's a song cry. So, what are some of the things that you believe that keeps people away from this conversation? So, and I'm asking this because, we're coming in the second half of the year, and I really think that's important when we get together for these holidays that we started having meaningful talk instead of filling our blood vessels up with what will I say? Cholesterol.
Oh yeah.
And falling asleep. And we can have some actual intelligent conversations, because one thing I always think about, and I could be a lot better myself, guys, so I'm not perfect at all. But if we got Aunt Jean sitting over here and she's like 60 years old, and we got these kids over here that's doing fairly well, how do we get together and put a policy out on her? Like, not a policy, but put a life insurance policy together, and the fact that she died, that it can benefit the family as a whole. I don't know if there's any instrument like that. I'm pretty sure that there is.
Yeah, so that would be more on the insurance side of the matters.
Okay.
I work more so on the estate planning side, but what I will say is that we have to start having these conversations with our elders. We have, because our generation is going to be the one most impacted by this, and they don't want to talk about death. Our elders don't want to talk about it. We do have some that want to plan, that are very eager to plan, especially if they've gone through a probate process that wasn't very friendly. And so but I think that our generation, we need to make sure that at these dinner tables, we're having this conversation is, what is the plan? Because we want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And so the best way to ensure that everyone's on the same page is have that conversation so they hear it directly from you, but also memorialize it in writing. And that's doing your estate plan so that when the time comes, they can not only just rely on the paperwork, but the conversations that they had so that they're making the decisions that you would want them to make and not the decision of themselves. And so it's just about having those tough conversations. And that's kind of anything in life. No one wants to have the tough conversations, but this is one of the tough conversations you have to have.
So yeah, I think that's cool. We definitely got to have the tough conversations. We got to get used to having them, and it's not just the senior generation that don't like having them. We don't like having them either. You know what I mean? But it's something that I think if we have more of them, we can start to put stuff together. It don't look so scary at the end.
So when it happens, it's not our first time. We're not scrambling because like I always tell individuals when they come in to do our estate plan, you're doing this estate plan so that your family can grieve your loss instead of focusing on the business of death. You want that time for them to grieve and to heal, not trying to clean up a mess.
And that's why you see people fighting at the funerals and stuff. You know what I mean? So if you can lay out a lot of this stuff so nobody has to fight, then guess what? Nobody got nothing to fight over. You know what I mean? They can just talk good things about you.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
All right, cool, man. You ran through my questions. I'm kind of sad because I had prepared a bunch of questions and purposes and content and everything else. So let's get to some nice questions. Something that's not so morbid. All right, these are off the wall questions. They got nothing to do with what we're gonna do. So we're gonna give you about 2 of them. You ever heard of TED Talk?
Yes.
Okay. So if you had to give a TED Talk on a topic completely unrelated to real estate or probate and life planning, or life estate planning, what would it be?
If I had to give a TED Talk unrelated to what I do every day, I would probably have to say it would have to be something with maybe clothes and fashion. I like clothes. I think that's your expression of your art form. So I think I would do something of that nature, talking about styling, what looks good, what doesn't look good, and being comfortable in what you wear. So something like that.
So if style is an expression of self, then how can you tell me how to be stylish?
Well, that's part of it. Getting to understand who you are. And good. That way, and being able to express that through your clothes. And so it starts with who you are first. And so that's kind of the TED Talk, like, figuring out who you are, what do you like, what do you don't like, and then how do you express that?
That's why I like being in this space at Community Cultivating Network. Everybody over here is on a free space. They free thinking. They be wearing whatever, but everybody's comfortable in their skin. So it's a great thing. It's being creative, right? Okay. All right. What is your go-to song to pump yourself up before a big case or a big what would you call your cases? Right?
Yeah, they're cases. They're cases. Oh man, it's going to range between gospel music and trap music. So it just feels trap gospel. There we go. It just feels what I need, whatever I need that day. Some days I just need an extra push from the Lord. Some days I need an extra push from the trap.
Since you're gonna try to evade the question, give me one out of each genre that you would use. So
okay. So not BB, but CeCe Winans is my favorite gospel artist. So it's going to be something from CeCe because she just, her voice is just so angelic to me. When it comes to, I'm a Houston girl.
Southside about to come out.
Southside. So I'm a big Zero fan.
Okay. I would have never guessed it. So, all right, that's cool. You got any questions for me?
Come
on.
Yeah, let's see. You can't just ask all the questions.
I know I can't. It's not fair.
Questions. So, what do you think is the biggest concern as to why people don't want to talk about planning for their death?
Thinking about death.
Thinking about death.
Thinking about death. It's scary. You know what I mean? As we get older, it becomes more and more closer in your face. You're like, because when you're young, you're like, man, I'm never going to die. And that's one reason that this conversation is important because you can't make a will just for old age. You got to make a
Mm-hmm.
will just in case we walk out that door and get hit by a bus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you always got to be prepared. We got to start. But I think it's just the death conversation, you know, as much as desensitized as we are in America about, we can see somebody get killed on TV with the blood and everything, but we start thinking about our own death. It's like, oh, no.
Yeah, we don't think it's going to come knock on our door.
Yeah, it's not going to come knock on. But he's coming.
That's the only thing that's promised.
Yeah. So let's wrap this thing up then real quick. Tell them where they can find you at. Tell them what. Before we do that, I want to let everybody know we are working on a life estate planning seminar.
That's right.
We're thinking of a cool name. So if y'all got a cool name, y'all throw it out there for us. We are working on an estate planning workbook. So that's something else that you guys, when you put this workbook in front of you, I'm pretty sure it's going to jog a bunch of questions that you ain't never even thought about before, but it's things that needs to be thought of and to put into the plan when you do it. Yes. So that'll be coming up in September. We'll put the dates out to you guys. We're going to push it out on Facebook, Eventbrite, and through every other channel that we know. So
okay,
we're going to get that going. So where can they find you at?
So my law office is called Carr and Associates. My website is Carr, that's CARR .associates. That's with a S. So ASSOCIATES. No .com, just Carr.associates. That's my website. You can find me there. And you can also use that same handle for Instagram to find me there.
Okay, cool. And guys, y'all look her up, and attorneys will tell y'all they do everything if you ask them. So look up, make sure you find a good estate attorney. And I highly recommend that you holler at Attorney Carr and get your stuff together. Get your shit together. It's time we need to get our shit together. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you.